Okay, hi book lovers. Today I've got with me Nafisa, and I'm glad she's going to share a book about women empowerment. I'm so excited to actually learn about it. Hello Nafisa, welcome on the channel.
Hi Richard, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this entire conversation.
Thanks for sharing. I think it's very noble. I mean, it's very important for us to share knowledge through the books that we read, and you're clearly doing so right now. So to begin with, Nafisa, you can share a little bit about yourself and what you do, just so that we can get to know you a little bit better.
Of course. So hi everyone, this is Nafisa here. I'm currently with marketing and advertising, creative PR industry. I work for an integrated comms agency called Lewis, and we have a lot of fun doing our work with different kind of clients, having different discussions. So that's a little bit about me in terms of my work background. I also like to write a lot, and if you need to read my stories, you can go check out some of my work on Humans of KL. So I used to be an active contributor there, writing a lot of stories. Also contributed a lot of women travel stories to a portal called Zafigo. So that's something that is also I do with my extra time, free time. Yep.
What kind of topics do you write about usually?
I actually started off writing more travel stuff, travel and lifestyle. So I used to live for a bit in Korea. So I kind of started traveling and discovering the country. So I wrote a lot about women traveling alone in Korea, do's and don'ts, what they should know, what they should not know. Moved to Malaysia, started doing a lot more local-based writing. And after that, kind of moved straight into marketing. So a lot of different things. With Humans of KL, of course, it's more social impact-based kind of storytelling. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself as a pro-woman empowering activist or someone who's driving that cause?
So I wouldn't consider myself as an activist. I think there are people out there who are doing some really fantastic work with this kind of topics. But I am a firm believer in women empowerment, in the power of women equality, and I do believe that when and wherever I do get an opportunity to discuss this with people, talk about it with people, I would do it. Yeah, so I wouldn't put myself as an activist kind of category. But yeah, I do hope that in the future I am able to kind of work a little bit more on this cause because I feel like it impacts me personally and a lot of other people as well. So that's future plans.
Now switching to books. What kind of books do you read? Just curious.
So I've been an avid reader since a very, very young age. Nancy Drew was the first novel I ever read. And I was, I think, about 8 years old then. So I've been reading a lot. I read across a lot of different kind of genre. Because I'm with the marketing industry, I tend to read a lot more like business and leadership and marketing driven books. I also feel very inspired to read biographies. So I do read books by Michelle Obama, Indra Nooyi, Ali Wong, Malinda Gates, so kind of biographies also I enjoy reading a lot. And I do also really enjoy a good novel. So like a Dan Brown, I cannot miss reading a Dan Brown book. And I also read a lot of South Asian authors. So people like Jhumpa Lahiri, fantastic author, fantastic writer. So I just finished reading her latest book, Whereabouts. I read it in like one day, record time. And I also like to read books that are a bit more spirituality and, mindfulness oriented. So books like Ikigai, Oprah's book, Wisdom of Sunday, really good books. So yeah, I have I'm an occasion book reader. So I have like a morning book and a night book and a travel book. Yeah, it's borderline OCD.
Well, I mean, for me, I have this knack for carrying a physical book and a Kindle with me. And the Kindle is always about, I would say, novels. And the physical book is always about biographies, self-help, so forth. So I always carry these two with me. But I have a third layer, which is my Audible. So I also have.
Okay.
I
so
also
you're into audiobooks.
Yeah. And during my day, I sit between these three, and they all have like different genres. So I just execute one And because there's so many books in this world, I think you probably find this the same frustration as I do. Like, you can't read all the books in the world. So I just kind of, time is crazy, and I only have 25 minutes for each of these channel in a day. So I try and read as much as I can. Yeah.
So it's great. It's always great to connect with people who read books, because then you're getting a good recommendation. So it's something that that's worth trying. So
yeah, good point. And I might just pick up the book that you're going to share with me today. What book is it? You want to share with us the book? Maybe you can show us the cover.
So the book that I would like to talk about today is something that I personally enjoyed a lot, and I feel like it gave me a lot of different perspectives, and that's The Moment of Lift. So this is a book that's written by Malinda Gates. She's the co-founder of Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it's a very, very interesting book. The cover says how empowering women changes the world. So yes, it's that kind of a book. So I feel like people who are uncomfortable with discussions around empowerment, equality, gender bias should probably not read it, because you might not agree with it. But I feel like for anyone who wants to learn more about why we celebrate Women History Month, or why we actually have so much focus on diversity and gender inclusion, I think it's a great book to just kind of educate yourself with the issues surrounding women, that have been surrounding women in the past and that are carried forward in the urban world today. So yeah, if anyone wants to have a different perspective, I would really, really recommend that you go grab this and have a read, and educate yourself about some of the global issues that we are facing.
Yeah. What do you think? There's a lot of books around this, a lot around women empowerment this time around. Like, I know you've got Lean In, and you've got a lot of other biographies about women empowerment. But why do you think this is happening today?
Because I think it's finally, I think we are reaching a point of escalation where people are willing to come forth and share their views and opinions, right? Like from our grandmother's generation to our mother's generation to the generation now, this has never been a topic of discussion. We've always just followed that stereotypical way of life that society has prescribed. But as more and more women are joining the workforce, people are willing to share their stories. Women leadership is becoming a known kind of spectrum in the working world today. So I think people are more willing to kind of come forth, invest their time in kind of reaching the grassroots level of these issues and working towards them. That said, right, I feel like this has always been happening in the background, but it's just that we have reached that point of velocity where people around the world, markets around the world, are looking at it as an issue that can bring change. So that's, of course, it's my viewpoint, the way I look at it. Yeah.
Wonderful. You want to go with the first takeaway? Like, what was the first takeaway from this?
Okay, so I think before I get into the first takeaway, I just want to give a little bit context, right? Like you mentioned, a lot of big books on this issue. And why I would recommend this is because Moment of Lift actually kind of examines issues across different societies, right? So it's not just talking about women in workplace or mothers, for example. It's actually on-ground work perspective of different emerging markets, different communities, different societies and challenges. So I feel like that's what makes this book really kind of unique, where Melinda Gates actually talks about the foundation and the work that they're doing at ground level. So, which brings me to my first kind of a takeaway, and I did some markings, right? Did some markings. I didn't want to miss out things. So, the first perspective that I gained reading from this book was the outsider paradigm, right? So, what is the outsider paradigm, right? So, like, if you don't mind reading a couple of lines, right? So, anyone can be made to feel like an outsider. It's up to people who have the power to exclude, right? So often it's on the base of race. So, you're an outsider because maybe you follow a different community, or you have a different religious belief. And in almost every society, women can be made to feel like outsiders, even in their own homes. So I felt like this was a very, very powerful perspective, right? And she explains it talking about how for years, legislations and laws around issues like the use of contraception, abortion, family planning have actually been made by a group of men. And these are issues. I'm really sorry, and I apologize if people feel offended by this, but these are issues that affect women, right? If you're going to talk about family planning, or if you're going to talk about the use of contraceptions, we would like to be included in that conversation, because at the end of the day, we are going to face the outcome, face that result. So feeling like an outsider and having that inclusivity factor, I think it's very important for all discussions, right? It's not just about in the workplace. Like even for agricultural communities, it's actually the women who go into the fields to do the hard labor. So if you want to introduce a new product, a new manure, or a new pesticide, you've got to include them in the decision making. And that's when you see change come by. So I just really loved the fact that she actually explains it using a very powerful example of the polio vaccine, right? So polio is now eradicated. We have no more polio. We're all vaccinated. We have those marks on our arms. But it was not always the case, right? It was a battle that was being fought, like similar situation with the anti-vaxxers that we have now with COVID-19 vaccine. People always question the viability of the polio vaccine. And this was very prominent in a country like India, which is also from where I belong, where people had a lot of prejudice against the vaccine. So this particular NGO goes around to smaller communities, smaller villages, smaller households, and starts educating mothers. Because at the end of the day, if you tell a mother, if you don't vaccinate your child, they will get a possibility of having polio is really high, and this is what it can happen. They are the ones who will take action, not so much the village heads or the community heads. So that strategy, when was put into action, it made something so impossible so very possible by including women and mothers in that conversation. So I felt like that was a very fresh perspective that the book offered. Like, stop treating women as outsiders. Even in today's working world, where there's a lot of talks, right? Like, you should have women CEOs, you should have women in the boardroom, but why are men discussing it, right? How come there's no woman involved in that conversation? So I felt like that was like something that really has stayed with me throughout the next couple of months that I've finished reading the book now. But yeah, so that was my first kind of key takeaway. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I felt like that was quite a powerful learning lah. Yeah.
So for moving forward, did the book actually suggest any ways of encouraging more inclusivity for women to be in the decision-making process?
Yep, it did. So it does go down to the whole, level of legislation. It goes down to the people with power to kind of have those conversations. It goes down to the level of social workers as a point of strategy, and including mothers in the conversation. So that was if I start talking about that, probably we'll spend the whole hour just discussing that. But yeah, it does also lay down those solutions, and a lot of great stories and examples to put things into perspective, right from Kenya to Afghanistan to India. So a lot of things in there for you to just kind of absorb and have a think of. Yeah.
It's also very much ingrained in the culture, right? In order for a culture shift to happen, it has to start from the new generation coming up. So was there any indication that mothers should reposition their young daughters to understand the dynamics and how they should be more inclusive and should have a foot in the decision making when they grow up? Because it's quite aligned to the book Lean In, that The idea
Yep.
of
Yep.
women leaning into the boardroom.
Yes.
And don't lean
yes.
out, lean in, make a
Lean
decision.
in, exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's okay. I don't know if this is a coincidence, but it's so great that you bring up this point and ask me this question, because it literally leads into my second key takeaway from the book, which is education and women. Right. So literally the second key takeaway I had marked was on this topic. And when we talk about women education, right, probably in a lot of developed societies, this is not seen as an issue because education is for all, right? It's very rare that you see a child, boy or girl, not being able to go to school or gain an education. But the reality is that in so many societies today, women education is not as much of a priority as you would give to a boy's learning or a boy attending school or a boy getting a degree, right? I mean, it's the same way even in a South Asian culture where I'm educated, of course I am, right? But was I empowered to make a career decision? Not really. I had to find my way out, right? I had to figure that mix on my own. Like, okay, what next? My parents were great enough to be like, okay, we're going to educate you, but we never had discussions around financial planning or investments, because at the back of their mind, it was like, oh no, we have to find you a dude and you have to focus at some point on a family. So that's the kind of conversations that we always have. So the book kind of highlights women education in a very different light, right? So educating a woman is not just about giving her a road to financial independence. It is also making young girls and young ladies very much aware about what you have as your rights. What are your rights to speak? Where are your rights to contribute? Where are your rights to defend yourself against esteem issues? So that is the kind of education that we need to start imparting at a very, very young age, at a very, very young level. So she, I want to talk a little bit more about what's shared in the book. So she says this amazing story about a nun. Okay, so this nun, she's doing a lot of good work because, that's the precedence of their role in society, in culture, until she comes across this community of people in India called the untouchables or the Dalits, where, they are not given entries into homes or temples. And there are a lot of young girls who are at danger of sexual violence, who are at danger of being out of their homes, dangers of being pregnant at a very, very young age because of lack of the privilege to educate. So this nun starts her school, a small shed-like area where she brings in street kids, especially street girls, and starts educating them, getting them to learn about reading, writing, basic math. But what she also does is she starts teaching them about women's rights. So at that age, when you come from a community that has shunned you almost for your entire life, has called you untouchable, has not given you entry into religious places and communal events, this lady talks to them about rights and teaches them self-defense. So she starts teaching them karate. And the girls get so excited about this concept of self-defense and self-esteem, and they work so hard at their karate training. So this group of girls, and you can Google it, it's a fact, have actually gone up to state, national, and international level in a karate competition. So they were given a chance to go to Japan to participate at the international level. And they arrive at the airport, and it's a Japanese culture, right? We bow down. So people give them a nod, bow down, and they were so shocked, like, why are you giving me so much respect? Like what is going on? And to be honest, right, that is the power of education, upliftment, empowerment. You believe in yourself, you believe in your capabilities. And this kind of, and this is a community that's very backward, very shunned, but we see incidents like this happening in so many places, even in the so-called modern urban society, where you are so set in a certain way that the moment you try to do something that's against the norm, especially as a woman, you will face questions. So you need to be educated enough, you need to be empowered enough to be like, hey, these are my rights and I would like to live unapologetically because what I'm doing is right. So you don't need to carry those self-esteem, self-burden issues along with you on your journey forward. So I felt like that was also a very powerful kind of perspective that was, that I read through in the moment of lift, which is why I feel like it's a great book, because every time a bold statement is made, it's very, very supported with facts, figures, real life incidents. So that kind of makes things a little bit more like powerful to consume. So yeah, that was literally my second key takeaway, women in education.
Yeah, I mean, education is quite interesting to talk about. I mean, did the book mention that vocational learning is it's the new way of learning compared to how we used to do it in the past? Like in the past, we learned about all of these topics such as like physics, science, everything. It's great to know, but whether it's applicable in our day-to-day lives may not be. But now I'm hearing a lot about vocational learning where we learn the things that we need to have a better future. And you mentioned some of it: financial knowledge, financial independence, being a good leader, and so forth like that. Is that what the book is kind of hinting for the new generation to learn?
So the book is, very much focused on learning for girls, young girls, and also young women, right? So there is a focus on the agricultural community, especially because the foundation does work in a lot of emerging markets. So Africa, India, Cambodia, where agriculture is still a very huge sector. And it actually talks about how teaching women things like assessing quality of seeds, understanding how to negotiate for market rates actually helps surplus crop growth and production. So that's, I think, where the vocational kind of element goes in, right? There's no point you talk about philosophy to this group of people. Perhaps they don't really need it. What they really need to know is how to assess quality of seeds. So that's another really great story in there, talking about this Kenyan woman who goes and learns and kind of uplifts not just her family, but the entire community in being better farmers, because the foundation was able to kind of give her that training and she took it with her to her community. So that's another very, very interesting kind of way of looking at things. Yep.
And I think this book is the stories they've been sharing are all coming from the
foundation work. Yeah.
I've always wondered how is it like to be working in that foundation, because they have been doing so many kinds of work.
I think it really helps that it is Bill Gates and Malinda Gates, two very, very powerful people supported with a great infrastructure. But it's also fantastic to see that the work that is being done is very on ground. It's with industries or with sectors that really need to be uplifted. And especially her work is very interconnected. So she started her journey with empowering mothers, moved into family planning, realized where the gap was, kind of tried to solve that issue, moved into girl education, and then slowly moved into bigger issues that's, into boardrooms, into leaderships, into climate change, into research. So it's been that whole sort of a journey, I would say. Yeah.
Right. Your last takeaway? What would that be?
I think my last takeaway might be a bit debatable, but I'm going to give it out anyway. So yeah, I have that bookmarked too. So my last takeaway is actually about unpaid work, right? It's about women and unpaid work. So again, please allow me to read a couple of lines, right? So on average, women around the world spend twice more as many hours as men on unpaid work, but the range of disparity is wide. So in India, women spend 6 hours doing unpaid work as compared to men. In the US, women average around 4 hours of unpaid work. In Norway, it is 3 and 3.5. So while there is, the gaps are getting shorter, at this point in time, there is no country where the gap is 0. This means on average, women do 7 years of more unpaid work than men over their lifetimes. This is about the time it takes to complete a bachelor's and a master's degree. So, so yes, so coming back to that, right, like unpaid work, making breakfast, getting the kids ready for school, dropping the kids to school, making lunch for the family, having a 9 to 5 job, coming back, doing the dinner, doing the dishes, doing the chores, is all a part of the unpaid work paradigm. And I feel like at some point in time, we've all been culprits of that, right? So I felt like that was a very, very strong point that the book made. About unpaid work and the average time that men and women spend on actually pursuing, chores and stuff like that. So most women actually have worked an entire day's worth of work before starting actual work.
Yeah, I've been observing this phenomenon in my own home.
Yes.
Because my wife and we have 2 kids. And we are both great earners. We both love our family, but at the same time, we want to have our career with us. And looking back at what was done before, where the traditional way, my parents' way and whereas before, is that there'll be one person earning the bread and there'll be another person governing the home. So there'll be somewhat of a balance here. But now both parties are having their career laid out. And I find the challenge is if you don't have a helper at home, then something has got to give, right? And the strategy gets very complicated. I think where the imbalance happens is that I personally feel that the women is taking much more of the load when it comes to delivering the kids, when it comes to caring. The amount of details that goes into making sure the kids are safe and so forth, right? I think it's beyond my mental capabilities. So the men eventually end up supporting as much as they can, like making sure the house is in order, making sure you wash the plates, making sure you can help out with the kitchen. But I feel like it's never enough. There's so much more that the women do. What do you have to say about that? Is this something that makes sense?
No, I think it's true, right? Little things always matter. And when we talk about the unpaid work paradigm, maybe in modern society where we've started to do things around very differently, like between myself and my husband, we are both bread earners. We are busy from 9 to 6 to 7 sometimes. So we try as much as we can to kind of divide our chores, make sure one person is doing something, another person does something. But again, coming back to a broader kind of view of things, right? While women have entered the workforce in so many more communities and societies, the expectation is very different. So, you could be a prime minister like Jacinda Ardern and people still question you on, oh, are you a good mother? She's running a country. Hello, excuse me. Do you need more proof? But apparently not. And, you could have women who are lawyers and doctors and PhD holders, but the expectation is still, but can you cook? But can you clean? But, are you able to support your elderly parents? So I think that sort of conversation needs to start coming in, and we need to start, erasing those expectations and gender bias. Right? Taking care of parents is a united responsibility, irrespective of gender. Taking care of your kids is a united responsibility. Making sure your house is clean is not just on one person. It's the entire household that needs to be aware, whether it's a neutral family setting or a multi-generational living. I think the more we cohesively work together, the better it is for everyone, right? Like, who doesn't want an extra 2 hours at night to just chill and enjoy with your family versus you scrubbing dishes or you prepping meals. So I think it's the mindset and the conversation that needs to change, and we need to start teaching our young boys skills that were always very specific to a woman. I've reached that conclusion that learning how to cook, do laundry and clean your house are life skills. which everyone should know, irrespective of roles. So those gender biases in homes, we need to kind of start pushing those aside. Will we reach a stage of equality? I don't know. Can we try? Yes. So I think that was another very like powerful key takeaway that the book shared. And it's very surprising that she mentions that in the early 1980s, there were women economists who actually did a study and made a legislation to take to bill that, we should account for unpaid work, because it in the long scheme, in the economics of things, it will make a difference that I don't think has come to practice yet. So that also talks a little bit about the problem on a broader scale. It's 1980, it's 2022 now, and we're still kind of having those same conversations, which is a problem, right? The level of our conversations should change, but it's not. So we kind of need to, go back and examine the issue a little bit more in terms of at what point should we change and where can that change start. So yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, I think what's even more
I could see your eyes were like, 7 years, really? Like a degree, a master's degree?
Yeah, it's long. And I mean, I also want to fly us to Japan also. Japan's the economic structure and how women were placed in society in the past is very different from now. And a lot of women wants to be in the workforce, and even the government encourages women to be in the workforce.
Yep.
Where does that place? And now that is another topic on its own, but you can actually see that playing out when family is not in the mix. So I think at the end of the day is that if you're going to start a family, I think the men and of course the partners will have to see it as a teamwork effort.
Yep.
Like you're starting up a business, and this business, what are the things that both parties have to give in order for it to be successful, regardless of roles and responsibilities? What should we do together as a team to go forward?
So I think that's fantastic that you bring it up, right? Because the book does talk about underlying sexism in the workplace as well, and how the Me Too movement started was, how there were very few women in the tech sector, and how the situation has changed so much in the past couple of years. So I feel like that there's this, always this underlying gender bias. Like sometimes we don't notice it, sometimes even women, we don't notice it. We make a comment on somebody, or, when it comes up in conversation, like, for example, sometimes in a society gathering setting, right? My husband is always asked questions like, how's your work going? How's your career? Like, where are you traveling to next? Different kind of conversations. But when it comes to me, I'm asked stuff like, oh, you must be working, you must be very busy. Do you cook? FYI, I do, and I'm a very good cook, but I don't feel the need to validate that question, I'm not going to dignify it with a response. So we do things, and I don't think it comes from a bad place. It's just that we've always had this underlying sort of a gender bias that's there, but no one addresses it. We kind of become accustomed to living with it. We are okay with it. I'm okay being asked if I cook or not, unless I'm not okay. And that's where change comes in. So yeah, I think this book has kind of given me a little bit more courage to speak up and, to point out and be like, hey, that's not a right question to ask. Will I take this journey to the next level? I don't know. But would I like to? 100%.
I would. Yeah, I will probably have that. I'll probably read that book, and hopefully it'll get into my daughter's hands.
Yes, I think you should. There's so much more that I would love to discuss, but of course, interest of time. But yeah, I would sincerely, recommend anyone out there who wants to, understand why Me Too is so big. Why there's so much conversations around women leadership, women in the boardroom, why we celebrate International Women's Day and the importance of History Month. I think go have a read. It changes your perspective. It gives you a lot of points to think about. And I feel like even if, there's like 5 people who tune in today, and even if one of them goes and reads the book, I'm good with that. That's where change starts. So yeah, I really hope that, people who do read it find it interesting, have something to think about. Yeah. And try to,
Well,
see where they fit in. So that's the purpose of the whole conversation.
Well, thanks to you, this video is going to be on YouTube for the rest of YouTube's life. So who knows who will watch it 10 years down the
But
road.
will it make it to the metaverse?
Oh my god. Well,
Oops, sorry, excuse my very, very poor and bad jokes.
Thanks, Nafisa, for sharing. Really appreciate it. It's
Thank
really
you so much,
insightful.
Richard, for taking the time.
Yeah, I think it's something very beneficial for not only for men but also for women, and it's something that we should all expose ourselves very much in the future.
Thank you so much. And sharing a last look, if anyone's interested, it's called Moment of Lift, Malinda Gates.